Hello everyone, I am the Hammer God, and today I'm going to get you started with the best leveling editing program in the world, Hammer for the Source Engine. So, if you want to make a map for a game that runs on the Source Engine, you're going to have to learn how to use Hammer. Now, Hammer can be a bit scary, but I've been using it for quite a while now, and we'll go slow so that you guys can figure out how this works. Basically, what you want to start doing is you want to open Steam. Now, some people might even click off here because they pirated a game. I recommend that you own the game you're making maps for, otherwise this is going to be a hell of a lot more difficult than it should be. And basically, we're going to be making a level using software that comes packed in with these games. It is in the game files. So if you own a Source Engine game such as Counter-Strike Source, Team Fortress 2, Left 4 Dead 2, or Left 4 Dead 1, or any of the Portal games, then you're going to be able to make a map in Hammer. Now, Hammer is a little different for all of these games, so for today's example, I'm going to be starting with Gary's mod. Gary's mod has the most features out of all the other Hammer editors I've used, and it's a good starting point for anyone who just wants to learn how to use the tool. But keep in mind, most of what I'll be doing works on these other games with some slight differences, and I'll go over those if I can when I see them. So first, what you want to do to make a map in Gary's mod is you want to right-click, hit manage, and hit browse local files. Now this will bring you to the main game folder. If you for some reason don't have a browse local files available, or again you pirated Gmod, you kind of just want to access its local files. It's under the local disk if you put it there: program files, Steam apps, comment, Gary's mod. Once you're in here, you're going to want to go to the bin folder. Now inside the bin folder is a bunch of other stuff. You have a bunch of tools and stuff, and you want to scroll down until you see this little blue hammer icon here. If I go to properties, you can see the icon more clearly. It's right there. And it's called hammer.exe. And what you want to do is you're either going to want to run it, like open, or you're going to want to create a shortcut. Now, I've already made a shortcut, so I'm not going to click on it from here, and we're just going to move on to the desktop. And one thing I forgot to mention, many outdated tutorials tell you to launch one of these source SDKs to get Hammer running. These are outdated due to some updates with Steam and do not have modern versions of the Hammer editor. So if you see a tutorial that suggests that you use one of these Steam tools that you download with your Source Engine game, please ignore it. These are outdated, and I would not recommend using them. I do not use them. So now that we're on my desktop here, I have my Hammer shortcut. Quick note, if your Hammer shortcut is in the same folder as the Hammer exe, your program will not launch. So make sure that you put this on your desktop or in a different folder, and you want to launch Hammer. Also, make it a habit to have Steam open when you're using Hammer, because some of functions of Steam are required for Hammer. Namely when you're finished with your map, and we'll get to that later. So what you want to do is you want to double click, and it will start loading and open the editor. It should be fairly fast if you have a modern machine. This program was made in like 2004-ish, so it's quite low cost most of the time, and you'll see its limitations pretty soon. So what you want to do is you want to do File, New, just like any other program. If you have experience with a 3D program, you're going to want to do File, New. And now here's where it gets different. So for me, you should have these three quadrants, these three views of just a grid, and then this view of it should be a box like this, or some other object, or maybe just nothing. So what you want to do is you want to go to right here. There's a little button that says camera, and make sure you have 3D textured turned on. And once you have 3D textures selected, you should be able to see that this box has a texture. And if it doesn't, please put it down in the comments below, and I'll get to it as soon as I can, or refer to the Hammer subreddit or any wiki that you can find, because it should It should be right there, but then again, this program is a little strange. So, once you have that done, you want to go up to Tools and up to Options. And this will be a bunch of options for your hammer. And you want to go to 2D views and you want to turn on, where is it? Default to 15-degree rotations. Now, what that does is later we're going to be rotating some stuff, and if you do not have that turned on, it will rotate it off the grid almost, and sometimes that's okay, but for someone starting out, I highly recommend rotating with 15-degree increments. It just locks it on the grid and makes things easier, and I haven't needed to rotate anything more than that. So we're going to start with that. So now you have all that set up. We still haven't done anything. We haven't moved nothing. So if you have, let's get into some movement controls. If you have your mouse on the top left view, if it's hovering over it and you hit Z on your keyboard, it will lock onto your cursor. So now you can see we are looking around in this view, and the controls are for moving around is W, A, and D, just like a game. And you can see there is some weird lines here, and I am now moving. These lines are actually the 0, 0 basically of the editor. This is the direct center, the exact center of the editor. So it hasn't even put our block in the center. So if we go over here, we can fly over to our block, and you can see it says no draw. I feel like I should explain this while we're here. No draw is a cube, or not a cube, it is a texture that tells the editor to not render this this texture. It tells it to not render this. And they're useful for a couple of things, and I'll definitely get into that later in the tutorial, but for today's purposes, you're going to want to delete it if you have yourself a no draw square. And then we can still fly around here. And to delete it, I just press the delete key on my keyboard. I recommend you have a full-size keyboard for hammer. If you're using a weird keyboard that doesn't have these keys, you might want to look into a better keyboard. So now we have now we have nothing. We have absolutely nothing. But since we are becoming a hammer god, we need to build our own world. And basically, what we want to do is we want to start with a texture here. What I did is I went over to the right side. It should be on the right. If it's not, I'll look into a way to get this back. It's the texture tool, basically. And right here you hit browse, and you can look through every texture that you have available to you with the current game you're using. This will also show custom textures, but those are really advanced, and I'm not going to get into those right now. So basically, you have every texture. Now, do you have to scroll through all of these and look for a nice one? Sometimes, but mainly what you want to do is you want to type a brick, or like type whatever you want to make your map out of. I'm going to start with some brick. So we have a brick texture, and since it's a low resolution preview, and you don't really get to see entirely what it is, we're going to make a cube out of it and see what it's like. Now, making cubes does not use the 3D view. If you were super excited to use the 3D view, the 3D view is just for viewing. And some in-engine stuff. Some stuff that you need to place down, or some stuff that you need to use will be in the 3D view. But most of the time, if you're making something new, it will be in these 2D views. Now this is the top view, and this is like left or right. So these are side views, this is a top view. So it gives you basically all the angles to work with here. And in the beginning it seems limited or overly complicated, but you'll get used to it after a while. This program is not very hard, it's just very slow to use. So what we want to do is, you might have noticed I might have done it subconsciously because I've used this program so many times. You should start out with the selection tool on the side, which is this red arrow. If you don't have the selection tool, switch to it and you'll see that's a red arrow. It'll let you click and drag in these quadrants here, and you can see that what I'm dragging and clicking is very thin, and I can scale it by putting my mouse on these weird squares here. But there we go, you can click and drag. Now if you want to make something, because obviously this doesn't make anything, you select to the square tool, and then you do the same thing, except now it's a white outline when I'm done dragging it. So, and you can see in the 3D view, if we mouse over and hit Z, because you can do this while this is happening, you will see the outline of a cube. If you don't see these little white squares here, try to hit X, or it should just be X to show these like little white squares on the end in the 3D view. Although you don't really need them. That's just in case you're wondering why it's different from me. And now, so once you have this selected, make sure you click back in the 2D view somehow, and you hit enter. And there we have our first cube. And then if we go into the 3D view, we can see what texture it is. This is a very ugly brick texture that I've decided to use here. And it is, it's just a bunch of messy bricks. I'm not sure what it's used for, but this should be in the game default, and we're just going to use it because this is not going to be anything fancy. If you want to make something fancy, I encourage it. What gets people into using these programs is, wanting to make stuff. So now we want to scale it more to a smaller size, and this is when I'll get into changing the increments of the grid. So basically, in the top left tiny buttons, you will see a grid, and if you mouse over them, it'll say the keybinds in larger grid and smaller grid. I never use the keybinds because I don't change the grid too much, and so we're going to make the grid a bit smaller, and you can see it does actually shrink the grid squares in each of these views. And another tip for these views, you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out, and it will scroll on wherever your cursor is. So if I'm all the way the heck out here and I want to go in this corner, it will scroll in on that corner. So you use the mouse wheel, the scroll wheel on your mouse, and it will go wherever your cursor is scrolling in. You can scroll back in here. Same for all the views. It's quite useful. So we're going to scroll in here, and we're going to resize the square with the new grid. And if we go up a grid, you'll see that it is off the bigger grid, but it is on the old grid. And there is a maximum or a minimum grid size. Like, you can only make it so small. And you'll find that out when you're making your maps. If you want to make something detailed or tiny, usually people end up using props for most of their detail, especially in modern map making. But if you want to make something small, you can just keep clicking this minus button over and over again. You'll see it gets to a point where it doesn't even show how small it is, and I have to zoom in, and then it's very small. And this is about as small as it's gonna get. So we're gonna go back out, and we're gonna bring it back to where it was. So now I'm gonna line this cube up with the cyan horizontal line, so it's lined up flat with the center green line there. You don't have to do that. I should make that abundantly clear. You can put this wherever you want. You could put it in the top right. You can put it way the heck down here. This is just your limited space. Hammer has a limited amount of space, but usually for games that run maps on the Source engine, it wouldn't be able to handle you using all of this space anyway. So if you're worried about the usage of space, you might want to look into another game engine. Because you can't make GTA, the entirety of GTA City, or like something huge in Hammer. You can make some pretty big stuff. I've seen some pretty large maps, but you can't make anything too crazy. So we have a platform. And you can select it in the 3D view. If you pull out your select tool, you can select it in the 3D view, and you can hit Z, and you can fly around it. Now, you're probably wondering, can I start this? Is this my map now? Will it work now? No. Main thing you want to learn about Hammer is that if you're seeing this black, if you just have a part in a void, your map's not going to work. How Hammer works is it cannot have anything open to the outside where the player will be playing in your map. The player cannot have access to this outside void. So think of it like a bunch of rooms. So think of Hammer as it always has to be indoors, like an indoor city or something. Everything has to be inside a cube. It has to be sealed completely in. There can't be cracks, or else your map does not work. I'm not really sure why this is, but that's just how it is. So if you want to get this map working now, you can. We have to go through a bit more steps before you can play this. But now we want to go and we want to make another cube. But there's something else you can do. If you have your select tool selected, if you click on your previous cube, these are called brushes, by the way, I should mention. Any of these solid objects you make with this tool, the block tool, are called brushes. Many other game engines use them. So they're commonly called brushes throughout, other level editors in game engines. So this is a brush, and once we have it selected, we want to hold Shift first, and then click, and then drag, and release, click, and then Shift. And then you have a second piece. So that basically you've copied a piece. So now you want to drag it around, and you can shape it however you want. And this is where the construction comes in. This is where you have to get creative, and if you're more familiar with 3D programs, this might be easier for you, but you do have to move objects in these 2D views. This was a struggle for me at first because I had been using programs that let you move it in the 3D view, and there is a way to technically do that, but I highly discourage it since it's only a feature I've seen on Gary's mod Hammer and New Hammer. But I'll tell you here anyway, just in case. If you hit X, like I mentioned earlier, it will bring up the white squares that you use to scale things, and you can scale in the 3D view. But as you can see, it doesn't quite understand what you're doing, and it shrunk my cube, even though I was really trying to make it go taller. It's finicky, and I highly discourage using it. So we're going to turn it off by hitting X again while in the 3D view. So now that we have this, we can I'm going to whip together a quick room. You can do that by duplicating these pieces. You can drag them around in the 2D view. I'm going to make a quick room, and then we'll be right back. Another tip I should mention is if you're in the 3D view and you want to select stuff, but it's getting in the way in the 2D view, you can't see it. Like there's 2 of these walls, but I can only select one. You can select stuff in the 3D view. That's why I said it has some uses. So you can select what you want. And you can also hold Control to select multiple objects, but you have to be holding Control the whole time. If you aren't holding Control and select another object, it obviously unselects them. So you'll be holding Control, and you can select multiple. And you can also scale multiple objects if you're only scaling them like one way and it doesn't get weird. You should be able to scale them as such. Alright, now I have a simple room. I don't know, it's like a brick shed or something? I don't know. It's pretty cool. You got like walls and stuff in this little doorway. Now, if I want to make this doorway even cooler, I can look in the 2D view. I could select in the 2D view, or I could select in the 3D view, and I could copy another piece, scale it to fit the doorway, and then move it up, and then basically you have yourself a doorway. Now, how do we know this is the right size for a person? We do not have a person in here. I don't see anybody around. It's pretty desolate. It's kind of lonely. We need some friends. So basically what we want to do is we want to put a character in here. Now, what I mean by character is you can place down the entity is what they're called. It's used for making entities, and you can place down an entity that allows your character to spawn in. Now, in different games, I know this for sure because I've messed it up before. It is a different spawn location. In Gary's mod and a lot of the other Hammer editors, it will be called info player start, and it's actually a meme among the community and quite an icon. With other people that use this program, it's kind of like the Blender cube, because everyone has to have an info player start for the map to function. So what you want to do is you want to select the entity tool. It says entity tool. It should be on this left side somewhere. Some Hammer editors have more tools on here than others, or less, but there should be an entity tool. It kind of looks like a pawn in chess, or a little guy in the board game Life. But it should just be a little guy. It's not a very high resolution image, but it should be right here. And once you have that selected, you can see there's if you go on the 2D views, you have this weird like triangulation thing, like I'm gonna shoot a missile down or something, like it's an airstrike. This is kind of weird, I'll admit, but that's because you don't really want to use this in the 2D view. You don't want to place it in the 2D view. You can if you want to, but what most people end up doing is I'll go back to select here and I'll click on entity tool and I'll click somewhere on the 3D view and bam, it's made a guy. I think this guy's likeness is based off of Gordon Freeman from the game Half-Life 2, but that's just me guessing. It kind of looks like him, but it should just be this green guy. He looks kind of weird, and he is our player spawn. Now, you can move him around wherever you want. I'm going to move him up to the door because I wanted to know if the door was human-sized, and it's almost human-sized, so we're going to move the wall down. There we go. We have ourselves a door with a human in it, and we have the wall that's been moved down, and so basically this is our house. But there's something you should know about this guy. When you place these, this is the only way you get entities. So if you click on him, you're going to want to double click on him. And then you have this menu. This menu is very important. I've seen this menu many times. A lot of what you interact with in Hammer involves this menu. A lot of what you want to use prop wise or functionality is in this menu, and it's usually all these tabs here. Some of them have more, some of them don't, but basically the main one you want to use is right here, and this is an info player start, like I said, and you can go through and click this drop down and you can see there's a ton of stuff here, and this is basically for game functionality. You can see a bunch of stuff for NPCs, a bunch of physics props, and all sorts of stuff. You'll get used to these as you need them, and I'll try to make more tutorials on all these things. With what I know, I will try not to make a tutorial on stuff that I do not know, because even a god isn't perfect. So basically, we have ourselves an entity here. So this spawn location, how do you place an entity every time? One thing I should note, in other games, this guy, by default, is not the player start. In Team Fortress 2, he is team player start, and that is only an issue if you port a Team Fortress 2 map to other Source Engine games, then the spawn won't work, but the player start that it gives you should work for the game you're making the map in. So now we have a player start. Does our map work now? No, like I said earlier, we need everything boxed in. So this shed is nice, but it's not all boxed in. You can still see the void, you can still smell the void. So what you want to do is you want to box this in with a sky. That's right. I don't know if you may have heard of a skybox before. These are basically what contains the game level in a pretty sky that makes it look like you're actually somewhere. So what we want to do is we want to hit browse and we want to type in sky. Now, I have a lot of other stuff here. I've put some custom textures into my game folder for other mapping endeavors. So you want to go past all this garbage. All of this is not what you're looking for. You want to go all the way down. You want to do this brush is what it's called. These are brushes. And you want to do this one that just says Skybox. Not 2D Skybox. This is used for something else. Just the one that says Skybox. And once you have that selected, you can now make your Skybox. So we're going to go to the edge of this thing. And we're going to move the cursor up. And we're going to hit enter just like before, and now we have ourselves a wall of a skybox, but we need to box it in. So basically what we want to do is we want to copy this piece like I showed you earlier with the shift click, and we want to make a full box, and I'll skip to when I'm done because it does take time. Now, you'll notice something while I'm building this, and I thought I might point this out. Hammer is a stupid program. It's old. It doesn't know things. It's not very smart. When I was dragging these around, for some reason, these don't go all the way fully to the grid. And this will happen sometimes. And this can actually cause leaks. Leaks are basically how I mentioned earlier is if your map isn't in a series of rooms, if it isn't contained, it will leak and it won't function. And sometimes they're caused by the engine just deciding it doesn't want to move the thing all the way onto the grid. It's stupid, I know, but it's an old engine, and you kind of just have to fix it yourself, and it doesn't happen very often. And I think it might have happened here because the last thing I placed was an entity, so it is confused. But even the entities on the grid, so who knows? And remember to make good use of views, of these views. So for a second here, I thought my roof was done because I had dragged this piece all the way across the top in this view. And I thought to myself, oh, the roof must be finished. And then I look in the 3D view and there's no roof. And that's because I've dragged it across on this view. But on this view, it's not across. And on the top view, it's not across. And top view is good for me. So we're just going to drag it across. And now we have ourselves a completely functional map. There shouldn't be any issues, and it should be completely fine. And a quick tip, when you place this guy down, after you place him down, you might want to move him up a bit, because sometimes your character can get stuck in the floor, because, again, this is old, and you might want to move him up a bit. It'll make things easier. I'm also going to move him out of the doorway. You kind of want to put these spawn locations in places where they won't be too close to any walls, but sometimes it's lenient with it, sometimes it's not. So basically, we have ourselves our first map. Now, here comes the part that is going to make your computer sad. And depending on how good of a computer you have, this will be faster or slower. And this is the part where it renders. And in Hammer, it's called compiling. So you're going to want to compile your map. You can compile it quickly, and that's what we're going to do first. But when you're finished with your map completely, you want to compile it on its regular settings to release it to the world. So basically, to start compiling, you can either hit File, Run Map, or if you see next to Run Map in this file screen, you can hit F9. I'm used to hitting F9 on my keyboard, and you have to save the map. Don't forget to save. This program crashes just about as any others, so you want to save your map. So I'm going to save as Earth. .vmf. I have file extensions on, so I have to put the VMF at the end, but you may not. So you can just not put VMF. Also, you cannot put spaces in these names. This game engine does not like too many special characters or spaces. So when you're making your names, try to stick with numbers and underscores. So if I want Earth and then I put a 1, because this is Earth 1, then I will put an underscore. And it's called Earth because I'm Hammer God and I'm creating the world. So there we have Earth 1 and we save. Now it will let us compile. That's some safety feature that I like, that it won't let you compile. And it will open this map. This folder. This folder has a bunch of options. Some I haven't even touched before. Because while I am a Hammer God, there are some things that even a god doesn't need. So there's a lot of settings here. Even don't run game after compiling parameters. These things you'll get into as you learn more about this engine. But first, what you want to do is, by default, it should have the run VIS or run viz and run run rad on normal. It should have that by default. If it doesn't, put them on normal and put BSB on normal. And what you're going to want to do is put viz and rad on fast. This means your map will compile quickly. It's still not going to be immediate, and especially if you've made a big map, it's still going to be slow. How it compiles is it usually uses your CPU. And if I'll try to show it on screen here, when it starts compiling, I'll open my task manager, and you can open task manager with just right clicking this taskbar or searching it here or various other ways. I'm sure you know how to use Windows, and if you don't have task manager, just look at other resource monitorings on other operating systems, and I'm going to show you how to see how much it's using here. So if I start running the map, this is a small map, it might be too quickly, but if you can see, it starts using more of my CPU, and it ran too fast, so I can't show you, but sometimes it will get to using 100% of your CPU. So I hit OK, and a weird window in the top left showed up, and it started running the game. This is why you need Steam open. If you try to compile without Steam being open, it will crash. Your map will crash, and you won't know what's wrong, and you have to have Steam open. So make sure you have Steam open. Also, make sure you own the game. Those of you that pirated your games, I don't know how this works for you. So make sure you own your game that you're making maps for. You'll also notice that the screen resolution drastically changed. When you're compiling a map in Hammer, it saves as much resources as it can, and therefore it changes the game settings temporarily to make it a very low resolution. And if you have a very big game, it might take longer to load. If you have Gary's mod, you might have workshop items that need to mount first, and it will be loading. And as you can see here, I am in game, but I'm not going to move yet because it hasn't finished mounting. And there we are in game, and what do you know it, we're in our level. You can interact with it just the same as any other level. You might have seen levels as simple as this, you might have played them, and I do think I have different sounds on for my guns, but that's not important. Most of your add-ons, if you're playing Gary's mod, should be disabled when you run your map. Sometimes they aren't, so I recommend if you do get into making a map for Gary's mod, you should disable your add-ons first or uninstall them, whatever suits you. But yes, we have ourselves a map. It interacts just fine with everything. If I spawn in a refrigerator and slam it against the walls and stuff, it reacts as it should normally. And there we go. We have a start to your first map. And in the next video, I'm going to get into how to do some more texturing, some lighting, and some other fancy stuff. But this is getting as long as it is, and you know, we just wanna get a basic start here. And I know this is a lot to process, and there might be questions, so leave your questions in the comments below, or refer to the Hammer subreddit, which I've linked down below, which are always happy to help new folks when they need it. I know I've gotten a lot of help on there, and I couldn't have got this far without them. So thank you guys for watching. This is the Hammer God tutorial, basic tutorial number 1. If you want to be a Hammer God like me, keep subscribe to the channel, and keep watching more tutorials as they come out, and you'll be a god in no time.